3. Land ho! Teddy sneezed. It was not a particularly violent sneeze, not one that would startle an innocent passerby or cause a policeman to draw a gun. It wasn't a messy sneeze, either, not the kind that required unfurling an oversized white handkerchief to manage. Just an ordinary, little, stifled sneeze. But for Teddy it might have been a geyser, an earthquake, a volcanic eruption. It had been 50 years since the last time he had so much as sniffled, and this severed, you might even say puny, little sneeze startled him. "Snudhead," Bobby said. "God bless you," said a more delicate Elaine. Teddy had forgotten whether or not the polite response to either exclamation should be thank you, but before he could say anything he sneezed again. His head felt heavy, as if silt were collecting behind his eyes. Teddy and his family were on another inspection tour of the spacecraft, their fourth in the past week. During that whole time, Captain Ramsey had been unable to awaken any of the other crew members, and he wanted to know what had happened. They had walked the miles of corridors. They had inspected the galleys and the computer stations. They had catalogued the damp corners of mold and rust, the broken fans and leaking valves. They found nothing extraordinary after a century. There was more wear than might have been expected from just one person's being away for only part of that time. But there was no damage that would have an effect on the central computer or the sleeping chambers it controlled. They had found nothing that explained why the sleepers refused to awaken. In the red glow of hibernetics too, Teddy studied sleeping faces he had not seen for decades. He and Elaine and Bobby had played softball with Billy Mzen just a week before the launch. Even in his long sleep the boy's hair looked as if it had been tossed by a recent wind. He was an older boy, closer to Bobby's age than Eddie's, but Teddy remembered Billy as being particularly kind, telling him to push his hands together and move them up the handle of the bat if he wanted to get a hit. Billy didn't need to choke up at all. He had a loose, easy swing that could power a ball out of the infield anywhere he wanted to hit it. And above Billy slept his sister, Anna. Even as she lay there, her mouth was open, almost in a smile. Teddy saw the small space between her front teeth that she might have been able to whistle through. How Teddy had loved that little gap in the sweet young face of the girl, who was just 9 or 10 and unchanged in all these years. Teddy untied his bandana and buried his face in it. "You do seem to have a cold," his mother said. But Elaine knew better. "It's not just a cold," she said. "He's crying." "Why would he be crying?" the captain asked. "The crew is doing well. Once we figure out how to wake them, they'll all be just fine." He wanted to sound confident and always did, whatever misgivings he might have had. "No need to cry, for gosh sakes." Teddy took a deep breath and tried to stop. "It's just a cold, Ed," he said. "And where could he have caught a cold?" his father asked his mother, who was a doctor, one of 3 on board the Wanderer. "We must have brought the virus along with us," she said. "But I think there's something wrong besides our cold, isn't there, Daddy?" How could he explain it to them? Teddy wondered. It was suddenly seeing Billy and Anna after all these years, seeing that they were just the same as they'd been the day of the launch. Just as Elaine and Bobby and his parents were the same. Time had stopped in its tracks for them. It had waited for them patiently while they slept. Sure, he was worried for them, worried that they might stay asleep forever, as good as dead, like wax models stretched out in their coffin-lid berths. That was not why he was crying. His father would somehow find a way to wake them. And when he did, Billy and Anna would continue their life just where time had left them. And that was what grieved Daddy. Carried by time as the others slept, he had left them behind. Left them as far behind as Earth, light years away. Even if there were softball games on the planet they were speeding toward, even if there were parks and beaches to play on, even if they all landed safely and started a new life there together, they would always be somewhere behind him. As much as he wanted to play with them, as much as they permitted him to, he would always be a distance ahead, an orphan of time. "Oh, Daddy, my poor Daddy," said his mother, placing an arm around him. "I wish we could make you all better." "It's just a cold," he said, sniffling. "Just a cold." They returned to the Wanderer's control room, the largest room on board the ship, except for the huge launching bays that held the landing craft. Under a curved ceiling, there were 24 adjustable seats that could be pushed back like reclining chairs. The room had its own toilets and snack station, so that the crew could work around the clock if necessary to prepare for a landing or make a course correction. The large viewing screen flickered to life when the captain depressed a square red button on the control panel. At the moment he did so, a nearby button turned to green. The screen filled with stars, brilliant light set against a blackness that was perfect and deep. More clicks of square buttons, and the image changed in flashes until Daddy's father found what he was looking for, the circle of pale green and tan that was the fifth planet from their second sun. Thin wisps of clouds spiraled over it. In the center was a great blue sea. All along its shores, Daddy thought, there must be beaches where ocean waves flung themselves forever against a gentle slope of sand. The lights of the control panel began flashing green and red in sequence, like blinking bulbs on a Christmas tree. Daddy helped his father work the controls, the two of them moving furiously, while buzzers blared and beepers sounded. Daddy was surprised to find he was more skillful at operating the ship than his father. He was quicker and more certain of what needed to be done. On the other hand, Bobby and Elaine seemed to be constantly getting in the way. When it came to running the ship, they were totally useless, Daddy soon discovered. Finally Captain Ramsey said to them, quite curtly, "You two. Take a seat at the back or you have to go to your rooms." Bobby paused long enough to consider whether or not to argue. He might have said, "That's not fair. Why does Daddy get to work the controls when we can't?" Or he might have said, "We didn't do anything, Dad." Maybe it was the look on their father's face, the eyes narrow and the jaw muscles tight, but neither Bobby nor Elaine said a word. The two of them minded better than Daddy, who did not listen very well to what his parents told him. He was the one who was out of practice when it came to paying attention. Over the past week, since the others woke up, he was always forgetting to put things away and then barking when his parents reminded him. He had no use for the daily chores assigned to each of the three Ramsey children. He saw no reason at all, for example, to make up his bed every morning as the lights glowed red with the dawn. "Do I have to?" he would whine whenever his mother reminded him. "Ship's rules," Betsy Ramsey would say. "You know that. He's such a baby," Elaine had said. "He acts like he's 9. Daddy would flush with embarrassment. Probably she was right. He didn't mean to be forgetful or difficult, but the habits of decades seemed impossible to change. A lot of the time, he still felt like a kid, even if his hair was grey and his face creased and wrinkled. He hadn't changed as much as his appearance had. He was still the same Daddy, couldn't they see that? They had no right to expect him to behave like a grown-up. But at other times, he knew he had changed and wanted the others to recognize it. The lights on the control panel stopped flashing, and the noisy alarms were quiet at last. "Mission accomplished, high orbit achieved," Mickey announced over all the ship's speakers. For the first time since he was a child, Daddy realized he had arrived somewhere. He was no longer in between places while speeding through space en route to a distant star. He and his father had parked the spaceship 98,000 miles above Planet 5. At last there was an above and a below to the universe, an up and a down, a solid here instead of an imagined there. They had stopped in a position so distant from their own sun that light itself would have to travel for years to reach them. If they could pick the sun out of the billions of stars all around them, it would have seemed just a little pinprick of light. And, of course, the Earth was invisible, as if it had been swallowed up after they'd left it behind. Their home in California and the tree Daddy loved to climb on the beach where they hunted for rounded bits of colored glass were unimaginably far away. But it was comforting to know that he might soon have solid ground beneath him again, a planet with gravity and sunshine and room to roam. And perhaps even beaches. Sandy beaches. "Your computer friend has finally done something right, Daddy," said Captain Ramsey. There was a rugged, impatient edge to his voice that reminded Daddy of times back on Earth when his father was displeased with him. "For once, he's done something without a hitch. You can't really blame Mickey for the programming mistakes, Ed," Daddy said. "Mickey's done very well, considering," chimed in Daddy's mother. Over the past week, they had discovered dozens of computer errors. Some were only minor. For years, Mickey had sometimes tossed the ship's dishes into open space, rather than reusing them. "Maybe he doesn't like to wash dishes," Elaine had said. But other mistakes were much more serious. Some of the programs made no allowance for the extra day added in leap years, and as a result, certain parts of Mickey's brain lagged almost a month behind the rest. It took the captain several days to reset all the computer's clocks so that distances and destinations could be calculated without confusion. For 2 days, while Daddy and the captain checked through his memory, Mickey was like a patient recovering from brain surgery. He lost his voice and could only speak by spelling out his words, letter by letter, on the computer screen. Daddy and his father were both convinced now that it was probably a programming error that kept other crew members from waking up, just like the mistake that had awakened Daddy too soon. The wondrous chief computer expert could get Danny solve the problem, but that was Billy Zen's father and he was still asleep in hibernetics too. Without a crew, they might as well turn around and head for Earth. Captain Ramsey tried one more time to wake the others, following each step of the routine that Mickey displayed on the control room's computer screen, but again he failed to wake them. They aren't dead. The ship hasn't been damaged. I should be able to wake them, the captain said. For the first time, he seemed worried and that troubled Daddy. His father and mother were supposed to rescue him and make everything right. The beacon had been calling them here, and now they were supposed to land and find the colony that had come before and finish the job of exploring and settling the planet. Other waves of colonists from Earth would follow, passing their long journey in hibernation and only turning back to Earth if no beacons had been left for them to follow. But most likely, the new immigrants from Earth would join a thriving community that had set down its roots on a distant world. Now Daddy was not so certain that any of it would ever happen according to plan. He was impatient and even angry with his father, who he noticed was not especially good with computers. Daddy sneezed again. The captain pushed his chair back into a reclining position and started it revolving slowly as he gazed up at the bowed ceiling. There has to be a way to fix the program, even if we have to take the whole system down and program it from scratch. You still think it's a glitch? Asked Betsy Ramsey. Daddy was distracted by the sound of the word, and he began saying it aloud, almost singing it in that curiously high-pitched voice of his. A glitch, a glitch, a glitch, a glitch, he said. It was one of those words that sound ridiculous when it was repeated over and over. A glitch, a glitch, a glitch, Daddy sang. Please, Daddy, I'm trying to think, the captain said. Daddy reddened. He had been trying very hard to stop talking out loud to himself with his family around. He talks to himself a lot, said Bobby, still angry that Eddie sat at the control panel while he could not. I guess that's what happens when you've got nobody else to talk to for so long. Daddy? Asked Elaine. When you talk to yourself, do you ever get into arguments? Sometimes, Daddy admitted. And who wins? She said, delighted with the thought. You or yourself? Daddy sneezed again. Stop picking on Eddie, Betsy Ramsey said. In the past week, she often had stepped in to shield the last born of her children from the onslaughts of the other two. Daddy was pleased that she did. He had been a long time without a mother to protect him. You feel a little feverish, I think, she said, putting her cool hand on his forehead and then stroking his hair. Daddy remembered how he was treated when he'd had colds back on Earth. He'd stay home from school, and his mother or father would fix him a hot cup of weak tea, with sugar and a slice of lemon. He'd been a sickly little boy, and there had been concern over whether he could withstand the long trip, even talk that he should be left behind with his grandparents. Allergies, his mother had said. There's no ragwort or mulberry pollen in space. He'll be fine. And she'd been right. Except for the broken arm, he'd been healthy all the time, until his cold. He sneezed again. Maybe you ought to go to bed, Daddy, his mother said. The captain turned to his wife and raised an eyebrow, as if he were about to say something. Before he could speak, Bobby and Elaine said it for him. Don't baby him, Betsy, they said at the same time and then laughed. The captain had been repeating that her for days now. It's true, the captain said. You do baby him, Betsy. And look at him. Does he look like a baby to you? For a moment all the Ramses stared at Daddy, who was looking up at the image of Planet 5 and had stopped paying attention to his family. They noticed the droop of his eyes, the wattle of skin under his chin and the tufts of long hairs that shot up from his dark eyebrows. Whatever other feelings they might have had about Daddy, their faces all displayed a single emotion. They were saddened by the sight of him, grieved by the loss of the little boy he had been. He'll always be my little boy, Daddy's mother said softly. Always. Luckily Daddy wasn't paying them much attention. He had taken out his pad and was busily writing Tony and Alan, his pencil noisily scratching out each word. You can't believe the planet we are heading for. It has huge blue seas and a strange green mass crisscrossing it like the letter X. The green X looks like it's clinging to the planet like a starfish on a rock. If Dad can get the crew awake, we'll land there soon, right in the middle of the X where the four arms come together. That's where the beacon is. It's where the first ship must have landed. I can hardly wait to see them. I wonder if they made it through all right and what they found down there. Maybe someday, you can meet me there. By then I'll know my way around the place. Very truly yours, Daddy. Daddy ripped out the page, creased it tightly and jammed it into a pocket. The flapping and crinkling of paper seemed a tumult in the mournful quiet of the room. Daddy turned to his father. Why do we have to wait? He asked. Why can't we go down there by ourselves? He asked. I know how to fly the lander. I could fly it all by myself if you let me. And maybe some of the crew down there can help us wake up everybody else. I've thought of taking the lander down, the captain said, but it's too dangerous. We don't know what we will find down there. But the beacon's working. That must mean that the first ship made it through all right. All it means is that the beacon's working. But, Ed, the captain began punching the buttons on the control panel again, going through the sequence that was supposed to wake up the rest of his crew one more time. He hit the keys instead of tapping them, as if the force of the blows would help to rouse the others from their sleep. Daddy remembered now that his father was usually cool in a crisis, but could also be impatient and even short-tempered if he was not moving ahead toward his goal. On a hike through the woods back home, with a full 80-pound pack on his back, he would charge ahead of the others, walking in long strides that left Daddy in his dust. Only Bobby even attempted to keep up with him. Daddy thought about the thousands of ships that had headed off from Earth, each to its own destination, to thousands of stars that might have planets, which might be suitable for human life. He wondered if all the ships had computer problems like the one that had awakened him early or the one that now made it impossible to wake the rest of the crew. That's why there are so many ships, Daddy concluded aloud. A lot of them won't complete their missions safely. Daddy's remark was the plain truth, but Captain Ramsey considered it treason. My job is to make sure that my craft is one of those that get where it's going and gets us all there in one piece. And nobody'd better say that we're not going to make it. He glared at Daddy as if he were not a child of his at all, but a stranger, an outsider with no claim to tolerance or sympathy. Maybe, said Betsy Ramsey hastily, it would be a good time for you children to leave your father and me alone for a while. Bobby and Elaine needed no more direct order than that. They moved quickly for the control room portal. Daddy rose to join them. Not you, the captain said sharply. I might need your help. Let him go with the other two, Daddy's mother pleaded. The three of them could use some time together. Sam Ramsey softened. I suppose there's no real hurry, he said. I expect the three of you to find something to do that won't get you into trouble. Daddy was annoyed to be treated just like one of the other children. Come on, he said to Bobby and Elaine. I'll show you parts of this ship that you've never seen. I know every inch of the place. The two followed after him. I'll take you to one of the launching bays, Daddy offered, once the portal clanked shut behind them. Dad said they were off limits, Bobby reminded him. Oh, come on, said an exasperated Elaine. Whenever we want to do something fun, Bobby, you're always saying, Dad said this, or Dad said that. Daddy's a grown-up person. If we go with him, I'm sure it's all right. We're not going to hurt anything, Daddy argued. I just want you to get a good look at Alanda. Well, I guess there's no harm in just looking, Bobby said. If he had been blindfolded and spun around several times, Daddy could still have found his way to one of the launching bays. There were 4 of them, each with its own lander. The Wanderer was like all the spaceships in the Second Starfleet. The living quarters and working stations on each ship were arranged in a column around a hollow core many stories high. The gigantic cluster of engines was in the very center, held in place by metal struts, like so many shiny spokes connecting it to a spinning wheel. The spin was important. After years of manned space flight, the space agency had learned that weightlessness was harmful to space travelers on long journeys. Spinning the ship had the effect of throwing its contents to the gently curving outer walls, creating an artificial gravity. As a result, the inhabitants could walk normally inside the spaceship, their feet against the outer hull. Because of the curve, Daddy always felt he was walking uphill. His calf muscles bulged from the exercise. The ship's security system should have prevented all but a few of the crew from entering the launch-in bays alone. However, Daddy had long ago figured out the code he needed to punch into the lock, and he was happy to show Bobby and Elaine how easily he could make the large inner doors of the bay swing open. I had to bypass Mickey's security to get access to the launching bays, Daddy bragged. It was one of a very few triumphs over Mickey. Whoa! Bobby yelled as he got his first glimpse of the landing vehicle. It was 2 stories high, a sweeping wedge of polished metal that looked as if it had been coated with silver. Daddy beamed. He'd finally done something that impressed his big brother. Bobby ran directly for the lander, but as he reached up to touch its shining surface, Daddy screamed. "Don't touch it," he said, just in time to stop Bobby in his tracks barely out of reach of the lander. Bobby turned around. "Why not?" he asked. "I wasn't going to hurt anything." "The oil on your fingers," Daddy said. "It'll ruin the polish. And your sweat could etch the metal. So? The rough spots might burn up in the atmosphere," Daddy said. "So? The entire lander could go up in flames, like a cinder flying out of a fireplace." "Oh." Bobby pulled back his hand quickly as if he had scorched it. "You've got to put on gloves," Daddy said, his face twisting as he tried to avoid another sneeze. "Show me where I can find some," Bobby said, all eagerness again. "I thought you just wanted to take a look," Elaine reminded him. "I want to get a look inside," Bobby said. "I don't know whether we should," Elaine said. "We're not going to touch anything," Daddy said. "I've been inside a lot of times. I guess there's no harm in just looking," she said. The 3 Ramses walked just below the lander, to a spot on the floor that was marked off with yellow lines and stripes like a traffic island on a highway. In the middle of this area, attached to a pipe, was a small computer terminal into which Daddy typed a message to Mickey. With a great whirring of engines, a square section of metal was slowly lowered from the landing craft's wing-like form. The elevator device stopped soundlessly in front of them. The Ramsey children stepped onto the lower platform and, at the press of a button, were lifted into the craft itself. The inside of the lander was as cramped as the spaceship was spacious. There was room for 12 crew members, 6 in the forward compartment or control room, and 6 more in the aft, all crammed tightly together like pencils in a box. The walls and ceiling and floors were padded and the chairs were conjured to protect the crew during sudden takeoffs and jolting landings. "Where do they keep the food?" Bobby asked. "And where's the toilet?" Elaine said. "Maybe we shouldn't be here," Daddy said. "We just got here," Bobby said with contempt. "You're older and bigger than me, and you're still just like a little kid." That shut Daddy up. He wasn't a kid, and he was tired of being treated like one. He could show Bobby just how grown up he could be if he wanted to. "I'm in a hurry, Daddy," Elaine said. "You're right," he said to the 2 of them. "We won't hurt anything." He showed his sister where to find the toilet. "And you're probably in a hurry, too," Daddy said to Bobby. "With the right computer code, you won't have to starve." He fingered a special code into the snack station, which dispensed 3 squeeze bottles of a pink liquid in 3 tubes that looked like they should have been filled with toothpaste. Daddy and Bobby settled back into 2 chairs in the forward compartment. Daddy was half miserable now. He was sure that his father would be furious with the 3 of them if he knew where they'd gone. His cold was getting worse, he could feel it. His throat was raw and scratchy, his nose had begun to run, his eyes felt as if they were bulging from his head. But there was another part of Daddy that was enjoying himself. He loved showing Bobby how easy it was to squirt the pink liquid into the mouth. And the tart drink made his throat feel a little better. "Snap time?" Elaine asked when she rejoined her brothers. Bobby replied by tossing a squeeze bottle and a toothpaste tube in her general direction. To Daddy's surprise, she pulled them out of the air expertly, one after the other. He had forgotten that she was the most athletic one in the family. She was a good swimmer and an even better baseball player. "Not bad, huh?" Elaine said as she pulled off the lid of the bottle and began sucking out its contents. "Punch," she said, pleased, and then squeezed a tiny dollop from the tube. She nibbled at it. "It's like peanut butter only it's cashews," she said. "What a great treat, Daddy." "Thanks. Any candy bars stashed away?" asked Bobby, who was not as pleased with the snack. "Let me show you something else," Daddy said. He began pushing a sequence of buttons on the control panel. Suddenly a screen opened up in the ceiling above them. On it was a projection of Planet 5. Most of its giant X visible now, without a cloud to obscure it, like a planet. Pale green hand clutching, that's a neat trick, Bobby said, rising to his feet and standing next to Daddy, alongside the instrument panel. Now what does this button do? Push it and find out, Daddy said. When Bobby did, the button next to it changed from red to green, from no-go to go. Push that one, too, Daddy said. Bobby obeyed, pushing a whole sequence of buttons that changed in turn from red to green, from no-go to go, until the entire panel was glowing green. And then there was a deep rumble, like the roll of a bass drum or the peal of distant thunder. Daddy smiled as Bobby's jaw dropped open. The lander gave off a low whining sound, as if it were answering the rumbling call that had come before. Now, you've done it, Bobby. Elaine screamed. She was as angry as she was frightened. You're always doing things without thinking. That's not true, said Bobby. I don't always do anything. From hidden speakers came Mickey's cool and unmistakable voice. Prepared for launch, the computer said with the same calm that he would have used to ask them to get ready for lunch. Daddy, do something, Elaine pleaded. Daddy knew what he needed to do to stop the engines from firing. There was still time if he wanted to, but the next few seconds were critical. 10 seconds to launch, said an indifferent Mickey. You don't really know how to fly this thing? Bobby asked. Sure, I do, Daddy said. It's a piece of cake. 6, 5, said Mickey. We'll be in big trouble with Dad, Elaine said. 4, 3, said Mickey. Even then Daddy might have stopped the launch. All he needed to do was press 2 of the control panel buttons at the same time. It took 2 hands and a long reach. It was simple. But Daddy was not sure he wanted to stop. If his father wasn't ready to begin to explore the planet, then maybe the 3 of them would do it on their own. He wasn't sure what to do, and it didn't help that his head was heavy or that his ears buzzed from his cold. But he lost all chance of stopping them when he began the deepest, loudest and most powerful sneeze in the whole of his long life. Snaphead, said Bobby. God bless, said Elaine. Launch underway, said Mickey. And all 3 of the Ramses were thrown back into their chairs as the sleek-skinned lander shot through the bay's open outer doors and headed for Planet 5.